Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. Once again, huge pleasure and a delight to welcome back Dr. Silkman.
Thanks, Paul.
Good evening, Doctor. How is it going over there in Adelaide?
Well, I tell you what, no kidding.
Yeah.
I've appeared now on 3 of your shows.
Yep.
And my football team has won 3 games in a row. 3 games in a row, Paul. And I spoke to the coach and he said, you tell that guy, you tell that Paul Capaldi guy, when he comes to Adelaide, one of these is his.
Excellent.
So thank you very much, Paul.
Brilliant stuff.
Awesome.
And, it must have been very disappointing at the start of the year when they were struggling.
Yes.
Was it a bit of a hangover from the season before?
No, it basically was a cataclysmic implosion.
Right.
Everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Right.
A bit like the Brendan Dassey trial, everything went wrong. And slowly the coach said, okay, we're going to introduce youth into the team.
Right.
And they're starting to now gel. Yep. And the good thing about being on the bottom, Paul, is that every team you beat is above you.
Absolutely. The only way is up.
Or the only way is up, correct.
We'll
probably still finish bottom, but it puts good stead for next year, which is awesome.
Yeah. Obviously, Aussie rules football was invented in Australia. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there isn't such thing as promotion and relegation from that sort of top league.
No, there's not. It's basically the same 18 teams.
Yep.
So, you can finish from top to bottom. And if you finish bottom, you actually get rewarded with draft picks.
Yes.
Right? So the system actually rewards you for finishing bottom, but actually punishes you if you finish top because you get less picks. But basically what they're trying to do is to equalize competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to make it as fair as possible. Another and the sport that I'm really passionate about, as you probably know, is speedway, motorbike speedway. Not the car 4-wheel drive speedway that they have in America, which is still round an oval track. But speedway, motorbike speedway, was also invented in Australia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they've had
crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. And those guys go really, really quick around the tracks.
Yeah, well, Britain's done well very recently with a guy called Ty Woofenden, who his father, Rob Woofenden, was a rider for various teams here in the UK, including Berwick Bandits. But Rob Woofenden and his wife, English wife, they moved back to Australia. So Ty was actually born and brought up in Australia, but has got dual nationality. So he's done very well. But Australians they've always done well at the sort of world level. But going back to the league. Again, same idea. Berwick Bandits were in what was known as the Premier League. They've now changed. They keep changing the title of the league every year. But basically, there's no promotion and relegation. And if you finish bottom of the league, it's because your average points per rider is very low. And what you can do is next year you can put a team together based on an average of riders that are better than the team that finished bottom. So in other words, the weak teams strengthen, the top teams they have to weaken slightly. And the idea being obviously, that you end up with a decent sort of level playing field on which to play. Yep. So I must mention last night's cricket, bit of a disaster for the Aussies. Snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. It was it was a very I would liken the sort of England performance in winning that game as being a bit like Aussie teams of the past that just don't give up. They just never know when they're beaten. And they will regularly, they used to regularly frustrate every other team in the world by just never. Always somebody would come to the party and
hit the winning runs.
Exactly.
Hit the winning runs. Correct.
Yep.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I think Australian cricket also is going through a transition.
Yeah.
I think it'll take a few years to get back to full strength, but every time we play the Poms, it's always an exciting competition. A lot of passion.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too disappointed because although when they've had the Ashes over here, they've been close most of the time. Like the last time it was 2-2 the last time. Here in England, which meant that Australia retained the Ashes.
That's right.
But
that's correct.
When it was over there, typically England would lose 5-0, 4-1. And I think there was only one year, was it 2011, 2012, or 10-11, when England actually went over there and did play really well, did end up winning. Yes. I think it was 4-1 in the end. But most of the time it was, it's always been a disaster. So, but yes, I mean, your golden era of your Pontings, your Steve Wars, your Gilchrists, Shane Warne, of course.
Of course, yeah.
He's virtually a naturalized Englishman. He's over here so often, commenting on the television
and always getting into trouble. Paul.
He's actually really, really good. I like his style. He's a very, very keen poker player, as you probably know.
Yeah, he does. He's very, very good.
Yeah, and as a captain, he's got that sort of poker playing mentality that lots of other people, captains, are starting to pick up on. And basically, they, at the middle of the game yesterday, Shane Warne says, well, I think that Owen Morgan, the England captain, he's just putting all his chips down and just going for broke, and it worked. Yes. It's. Yes. Anyway, we're not here to talk about sport too much, are we? No. Well, really? Actually, I'll tell you what we could, and what we'll do is I'll edit the title and change it to something else.
Well, Paul, when you come to Australia, one of these is yours.
Well, that's brilliant because the black and gold, that's the colour for the Berwick Bandits.
Yes.
Yeah, we're black and gold. In fact, our clubhouse is called the Black and Gold. Let's have a look and see who's joined in on the chat. So I see that we've got Bean Green and obviously yourself, Kelly Cowles, Dark Side of the Moon, TTM Fangirl, TikTok Manitrock Fangirl, Wendra Nolan, hello, Victor Davis, hi there, and we've got Carl Martin, hi there. So yeah, we've got a whole load of people have come to discuss cricket and Aussie Wolves football with us. So that's good. Did you see that tweet yesterday of on Reddit? Sorry, yes, it was on Reddit. It was a post on Reddit saying, maybe Kathleen Zellner should get in touch with Ken Kratz and somehow manage to get him some sort of witness protection.
Well, I actually haven't seen that just yet. But you know what? I think every supporter, every MAM supporter, every supporter of Brendan and Stephen wants to see Ken Kratz on the stand and sweating. They don't want any type of witness protection. They want to see him actually sweating on the stand and answering a lot of hard questions. I'm sure that's all what we want to see. Him to actually face the music. Considering all the hassles that he caused the Avery and Dassey family, I don't think Kathleen Zellner would be in a generous mood.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, she actually talks about the unmasking of Ken Kratz, doesn't she?
No.
And not just Ken, is it? It's the state handing back bones. That it's just when you think back, looking back at what we've discovered in this case.
Yes.
When you think how low things have stooped to then discover that they'd handed back the bones, and for Angela Sukovic to act as well, as Roy Griffin pointed out in his song Assistant DA, he compared Angela Sukovic to an assistant DA who was purely there just to defend the state.
I mean, we all know the story, right? How the bones are given back to the Horbach family in 2011, and it was all part of like secreting away the evidence, because they heard in the wind, right? They would have known, the state of Wisconsin would have known, Fallon, Kratz, all those guys would have known that Kathleen Zellner was around the periphery, asking a lot of questions, wanting to retest a lot of the evidence. And so you can see that even though Fallon had this agreement with Kathleen Zellner, he disappeared. Right? He just simply disappeared like the bones. And it's interesting, you make a really good point. The person who's out front, the person who's still putting their head out front is Ken Kratz. Whereas the other guys, Garn, Fallon, they've scattered. They've gone. They don't want anything to do with, promotion, being in the limelight. But Ken Kratz cannot let it go. He can't let it go.
It's so personal to him, isn't it? Because he's tried to present himself as this great advocate for crime victims.
I say like akin to a knight in shining armor. He thought he was going to be the white knight. And he thought that people of Wisconsin, Manitowoc were going to adore him, adulate him, name their first baby Ken. He thought, no problem. He thought, I've got these two scumbags, I've put them in prison forever, etc., etc. But how the tables have turned on Ken. He never saw it coming. He really never saw it coming. And he still, to this day, won't get the hint because, as you know, Paul, I've spoken to him in terms of like answering messages. He's never responded back to me. He just can't keep out of the limelight. He always wants to put his name forward all the time.
Oh yeah, but he sure does want to associate with you when it comes to being a genuine scientist from Adelaide, which is well, it's listen, it's a tribute to you, quite rightly. It's paying respect to you.
Well, I should give him the shirt that my team Foul Play gave me, Forensic Ninja, but gangster. But the problem is that that's definitely was Ken Kratz. And the guy he was making up had 5 PhDs, 5 university degrees, but they were all in fields that had nothing to do with forensics. There was geology, geoscience, computer, had nothing to do with the actual case. And you would have had to have gone to university for about 50 years to get all those qualifications. So it was a bit of a mockery, but, what can you do? What can you do? I'd love to have if he lives in Adelaide, South Australia, we can maybe go out for a drink or a pizza. I'd love to talk to him.
You know what? It would be one of those things where, if I ever did get to talk to him, it would be respectful, but very respectfully, I would point out to him that, I would want to know this question. Was it your own personality that came forward and became such a mess in all of this? Is it just your personality, or was pressure brought on you from other sources higher up the food chain? Ken, we need you to sort this out.
To be honest, I think it's a bit of both.
Yes,
I really think it's a bit of both. He had the puppet masters above him, but Ken Kratz, because I read his book, and you could tell that he put himself in a position of responsibility, and you remember during the trial, I'm taking on this great burden for Manitowoc, but I'll do it, and it's sort of like, look at me, I'm doing this for the state, and we're going to put away these 2 scumbags. So in effect, it's his personality, no doubt about it. And he even blamed drugs, his sex addiction, his narcissistic personality for the wrongdoings. But that's only because he got caught.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean,
because he got caught.
Yeah. And in terms of getting caught, it was interesting how he sent one of the emails that he exchanged with Wisconsin DOJ when they first got onto him about the sexting. You know, he was making it quite clear that what was the Attorney General at the time was the guy with the Van something name. It was whoever it was back then.
Yes.
I can't quite remember the name of the Van somebody. But anyway, he in his letter he said, you have to take into account my sort of unquestioning support of JB Van Hollen. That was it, JB Van Hollen. It was the Attorney General in 2010. That involved obviously from a financial point of view contributing to his election campaign and the convictions of Stephen Brendan. And as you said, he was totally expecting, as you say, to everybody to hail him as this great white knight that comes along.
Correct.
And isn't it bizarre how even this sexting scandal, as far as he was concerned, because he was so good, he was such a superb person, they should just forget about it,
No doubt.
No doubt. As if you owe me so many favors,
That's it. He thought he had enough credit in the bank.
Yeah.
Because if you actually read those emails, they're very, very interesting, because he basically lists all the good things he's done.
Yeah.
And he kept on saying, well, have I broken the law?
Yeah.
Have I done this? Have I contravened any type of act, or et cetera, et cetera? He couldn't put in his head that what he was doing, not only was it in bad taste, but the mere fact that he himself was acting just like he was accusing Stephen Avery of being a sexual predator. Exactly. And it's like, hello, karma finally got him, right? Karma finally got him. And when the tables got turned, he had a hissy fit, right? Remember the journalist that said to him, I'm gonna write this up, I'm gonna put it in the paper. And Ken Kratz went ballistic, right? So now all of a sudden, when someone turns the tables on him and is going to release information in a press conference about his activities, no, that's not news. According to Ken Kratz, that's not news. And
that's a non-news story.
Non-news story. And Ken Kratz named all the people that he suspected where he got the story from, right? Because he wanted retribution, right? And so when the tables are turned in that manner, right, it's the pot calling the kettle black, right? So he copped it and he paid a very, very heavy price. But not only that, I think the worst thing that's come out of all this is his credibility has been shot, right? He no longer can stand on the soapbox, Paul, and say, Stephen Avery's this, Stephen Avery's that. Well, look in the mirror. You've done exactly the same, but worse for him, because he was in a position of power.
Absolutely.
Right? So hence he was taking advantage of these poor victims who were relying on Ken Kratz to protect them from domestic abuse, and Ken Kratz was actually sexually abusing them, right?
Totally.
It's a terrible, terrible story. It really is.
It's interesting because that was one of the things in the very first conversation that I had with Sheriff Herman. He complained to me about the fact that the documentary had included the sexting scandal. And he said, well, what's that got to do with the, with the
correct
with the case, And I said, well, yes, I can see your point, Robert. It was. It was a case of adding that little bit of, sensationalization to the case. But back then, I knew nothing. All I'd done is basically watch the documentary and watched a few videos on YouTube. now looking back, I can see exactly why that was included in the documentary, because it is totally relevant to,
Yes.
to the case. And
Yes.
you can see how that, that whole retelling of the press conference, it's almost as if, that would be Ken Kratz's sick fantasy, wouldn't it?
No doubt. No doubt. You don't become a narcissist. You
Yeah.
don't become addicted to drugs. You don't have an addiction to sex
Yeah.
just overnight.
Yeah.
Right? It's part of his personality.
Yeah.
Right? Because I remember there was an interview with him and Buting. I think it was on Dr. Phil.
Yes.
And it was amazing how Buting said to him, "Oh, yeah, but you've had accusations right in the past, as in before the Stephen Avery case." And Ken Kratz goes, "Oh, yeah, but we sorted all those out. There was no basis in those." It's because he probably paid off the the women just to keep quiet. And so there's put it this way, there's a history that's
definitely
there, right?
Definitely.
And in court, in the trials, Paul, and I know how he was building up this momentum against Stephen, right? About his past crimes, his hassles with women, etc., because he was creating the monster in the courtroom, right? That was his whole aim. Yeah. And in reality, he was the monster. So I don't know what Judge Willis was talking about when he said to Stephen, "You're the most dangerous person in the courtroom." He should have been looking at Ken Kratz. Seriously.
He probably looking back on it now and realizing that, in that conversation on Dr. Phil, I'm sure Jerry towards the end says, "Yeah, well, I believe in 15 women." I believe the 15 women, and you're absolutely right. When you look at the sexting scandal, it goes way, way back to the late 1990s, and even his job before becoming the Calumet County District Attorney, he left his previous job under a cloud of there being a sense that something was things weren't quite right.
I was going to say, if I can quickly say, I'm embarrassed myself, but if you read the local Australian newspapers, you'll find that Vice Chancellor of my previous university got done in for precisely the same type of thing, sexual harassment. And oh my Lord, it really is a very, very terrible thing. And not that I'm dwelling on that, but you don't suddenly develop those traits. Right? It's part of your DNA. It's part of your makeup. It only becomes an issue when you get caught, right, Paul? It only becomes an issue when you get caught. Ken Kratz got caught. The Vice Chancellor got caught. These are top individuals high up in the echelon of the university.
Wow.
And it's very, very sad.
Correct. Yeah, we've had a load of high-profile cases here in the UK of celebrities going back to the 80s, even the 70s. Albeit that people are finding out about them when basically what were kids and young teenagers back then are coming forward and saying, somewhat similar to the Epstein situation.
Yes.
It's just. Isn't it a case of, though, people in authority just sort of turned a blind eye to this kind of stuff?
Correct. And at the end of the day, people have to know, right? People who employ these individuals have to know of people's past histories. But what they do is they sweep it under the carpet, right? So in one effect, Ken Kratz was quite happy to air the dirty laundry of the Avery and Dassey families.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In court, in public, on TV. But when the tables were turned, he went crazy. How dare you do this to me, right? So, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And it really says a lot about his personality and character. And that's why if we now go back to what we were originally going to talk about,
Yeah.
On what they could have done. Now it's got a lot of sense when
Yeah.
one considers the strange laws in Wisconsin that were active at the time. And am I allowed to plug a book?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just finished reading a book and I'll read it out. It's called Convicting Avery, The Bizarre Laws and Broken System Behind Making a Murderer. And it was written by Michael Ciccini,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I've just finished reading the ebook. And if I could just also say that Tracy from the Scales of Injustice actually interviewed him.
That's right.
And it's on YouTube. And it really is an amazing, because he's a lawyer. He's into the law. Now, I don't have a law background, but the way Michael Ciccini wrote the book, it's essential reading, right? It really, because I finally understood how Stephen and Brendan lost, and also his attorneys lost. It's because of the weird laws in Wisconsin and surrounding, Manitowoc, Calumet, all those surrounding counties have got these real weird laws, which are all stacked in the favor of the state.
Yeah.
Right? They're all stacked in the
Absolutely.
favor of the state. And Ken Kratz, Fallon, and Garn used the laws to manipulate the judge. And also the judge was well aware of these laws and also manipulated the defense team, right? Because remember how many times Buting and Strang just stood there with their mouths open going, what? Judge, you don't see the relevance in this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the judge goes, no, I don't see the relevance in this.
Yeah.
Which was truly amazing. Those Wisconsin laws had an incredible effect on the outcome of the Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey trials. I urge everyone to grab a copy of that book. It's not that expensive, and read it from cover to cover. Once you do that, the penny drops, right? The penny drops, and you understand what Ken Kratz did in the trial. In the trials, you now, it makes perfect sense how the trial unfolded during the trials.
I am familiar with that book, and I will get it at some point. I am totally backlogged at the moment with books. I need to get on to the one by Mark Godsey called Blind Injustice, and even in the forward at the beginning, it says that this is being used as a course book if you're doing the university degree into the making a murderer case and others, and so it's so that's a good one. We mentioned last week that it's very much a class thing, isn't it? Because you're the accused and you're lower class, the people above you, they can do what they like, and nobody below us is going to bring us down. And that's really what this was all about, wasn't it? It's a case of do as I say, not as I do. And if you don't, then we'll jump on you. But we're protected. We're fine. We can do what we like.
The whole thing, starting from 1985, was a power struggle. In fact, even his troubles with his cousin, right?
Yeah.
It's a power struggle. His cousin, her husband, just happened to be a deputy sheriff in the MTSO, right? So the last person you want to pull a stunt like that on would have been Sandra Morris. So his trouble started back then, right? And so, yes, you're correct. It is a power struggle, and everything is stacked against you. And now I understand what the state was doing with the bail on Stephen Avery.
Yes.
Right? How the bail kept on going up and up and up. It was a strategic plan. And I believe his final bail cash. They couldn't put up the salvage yard. That's put up a cash bond, right? And they wanted to ensure the reason why it was so high, they wanted to ensure that Stephen Avery remained in prison. And there was a strategy of why they wanted to keep him in prison, even though he was a low-risk person, right? He wasn't going to fly anywhere.
No.
He wasn't going to, as in, try to escape. He even went to Kratz and stayed there, didn't cause any trouble. Let the MTSO officers come into his house, search it, check it, no problems at all. He was very low risk. But Ken Kratz had a strategy to put him in prison immediately. Remember that press conference when there was Kratz and Pagel, and the reporter said, "Where's Stephen?"
Yeah.
I don't know. Is he allowed a phone call? I don't know. Has he got access to a lawyer? I don't know. So they secreted him away. They shielded him.
Yeah.
And they had a plan in place, and it worked like a charm. Yeah, unbelievable.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry, just going back to the chat there. The Michael Cialini book is called "The Broken Laws." That is that what it's called?
It's called Convicting Avery, the bizarre laws and broken system behind making a murderer. And what Michael does, he actually goes through all the peculiar and particular laws of the Wisconsin system, and how it's almost impossible to break it from a defense point of view, and how the bar is different compared to the state, compared to the defense, what they have to prove or not prove. The odds were so stacked against Stephen and Brendan. They were doomed. They were doomed from day one.
Yeah.
And once you read the book, the penny drops. And you know how we were just talking about Ken Kratz, right? How we did that press conference on March the 2nd with Pagel, right?
Yep.
And how we released all this information. Well, apparently it was ethically not right to do so. But did you know that, now wait for it, Ken Kratz, Kaczynski, and Michael Kelly broke no rules in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah. None.
None of them could be sanctioned. Yeah. And the only person who got sanctioned was Ken Kratz for his sexting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything he did prior to the trial, during the trial, and after the trial, he broke no rules.
Yeah.
And none of them did. None of them did.
Absolutely. This conflict of interest that, the only one that was excluded is Deborah Kakach.
Correct, was the coroner. Was the coroner who had nothing to do with Stephen Avery prior, right? But all these Manitowoc sheriffs and deputies, and also my favorite person, Cherie Cohen, had huge conflicts of interest, yet nothing was done, right? Everyone turned a blind eye. And I'll tell you what, those laws in Wisconsin are so rubbery, right, and so flexible, the judge and the state can bend them any which way they want, and the defense has got nothing to stand on. And that is the scary, scary thing. Like I said, if you read that Cialini book, it actually now makes sense. I never really grasped what those issues and concepts were, but Michael lays them down really well in the book. And once you read it, you go, oh my God, he had no chance. He had no chance at all. And that's both of them, both Stephen and Brendan. Yeah. And they were very, very strategic, especially with Stephen.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. The sorry, in the chat, I don't know if you're able to see the chat or commenting on it at all, but there was a request to to put the link to that book in the description, which I will do, and also
it's available on Amazon.
Yes,
it's available on Amazon. Yeah, it's not a huge book. Might take you maybe a couple of days to read, but it's use it like a Bible. because he goes through everything really, really well. And he talks about the Wisconsin rules and how basically he's saying they're so archaic that you need a complete overhaul of the system.
Yeah.
And once you understand that Ken Kratz, Kaczynski, and Michael O'Kelly did not transgress at all, you then understand what Stephen and Brendan were against.
Yeah.
Because remember, there were the 2010 post-conviction hearings for Brendan,
Yep.
where the judge said, nothing to see here, boys. No one did anything wrong, you know?
Yeah.
Brendan, back to prison you go. And that's because the judge was acting on the rules of Wisconsin, right? And the only reason why, as you know, the only reason why Kaczynski got booted was because he allowed an interrogation session to take place without him being there. That's the only reason why. Otherwise, you would have still been there.
Yes, I mean, it's one of these things that you notice so often is that, you know, the playing field, the goalposts, the playing field can be made so unlevel. The goalposts can shift. You know, everything can be done by those in power to try and squirm their way out of all of this.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And if you now go back, if I could just sort of say, Paul, Foul Play is actually reading the entire case.
Yes.
All the testimonies. And we've got certain characters who are playing the roles. And oh my God, one of our members, Susan, she's possessed by Ken Kratz.
Yeah.
She actually outdoes Ken Kratz.
Wow.
And like when you listen to her voice, you go, oh my God, it's Ken Kratz. But she does it so classy.
Yeah.
But now that if you go back and you listen to those recordings again, you can now pick out the shenanigans that was happening during the trial and the constant to and froing, Paul, between Ken Kratz, Tom Fallon, and the judge.
Yeah.
Right? And whenever something got real sticky or hairy, judge, I want the jury out.
Yeah.
I want to be heard outside of the jury because they didn't want to hear anything that was controversial or could confuse the jury. They had to do it behind closed doors, and they didn't allow the jury to hear a lot of things. Absolutely. And so again, you've got classic manipulation of the jury by the rules of Wisconsin, right? Yeah. And I just couldn't believe it when I read it.
Sure. Yep. It's. I think you've summed it up nicely. Just one little thing that Dark Side of the Moon said. Paul, make T1 a mod. Dark Side of the Moon, done.
T1's good. I like T1.
Oh yeah.
Comes up with some really good stuff. We have to give him a microphone and make him come on.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think T1 will be too impressed with that. But yeah, no, it's awesome. And you know, the amazing thing that, if I could just say, Paul,
yes,
is the community that we have.
Yeah.
From all over the place, all different YouTubers, Foul Play, Millbilly, your channel, many other fine channels. My God, there's some real cluey people. Tracy as well, who's legal background. It's phenomenal how everyone's got a particular interest in the case, and everyone comes together and to add their comments and suggestions, which is fantastic. And don't forget, right? You've got professors, you've got lawyers, you've got academics who've looked at this case and pulled it apart, right? Pulled it apart. And so people are very, very interested in the outcome and also how Kathleen Zellner is going to approach the case, whether she goes in and comes out to get Stephen out, or whether she's going to have a go at the Wisconsin judicial system. And sort of like, oh my God, it'll be at her peril if she tried to stunt like that.
Yeah, it's interesting talking about the, to add a few other channels to add to that list would be like Stacey Seabrook with his songs and Linda K. Breer, the the 80 More Things, Andrew Whitehead. You know, there's so many out there. You know, it struck me that when we were having the build up to MAM 2.
Yes.
It actually was one of the things that struck me was that because we've been following this case so closely, we will be ahead of Making a Murderer Series 2, and we are getting the best front row seats in all of this, aren't we? You know, by actually following it on a daily basis, you know, covering the case. It's you know, it's their most successful documentary.
Yes.
Sorry, carry on. Yep.
Yes, it is. But the other thing is that we all form this fantastic network.
Exactly.
And we eat, breathe, and sleep Making a Murderer and the two cases, right? And then when other cases come along, you can see the similarities. Yes, there are differences, but it's the same type of issues in all of these wrongful conviction cases, common threads. And oh my God, Kathleen Zellner, what a champion she is to have gotten all those people released. And how many times was she criticized?
Oh.
You're not going to get anywhere. You're wasting your time. These men are guilty. And yet, slowly, by deconstructing the case, by attacking the forensics, she's overturned so many convictions. It's just not funny. Which goes to show, Paul, how many other people are still sitting in prison waiting their turn, right? Yeah. Waiting their turn. That is the scary thing, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, again, another thing that struck me, you know, we don't refer to accidental convictions or unfortunate convictions or mistaken convictions. They are wrongful convictions for a reason. And that is because people know exactly what they're doing when they wrongfully convict people.
Yes, correct. And it's the same type of thing. There's a lot of pressure. There's the use of the read technique. So there's basically the investigators think you're guilty. Yeah. They don't come in thinking that you're innocent. They think you're guilty. And so they're permitted to lie, fabricate, put two people against each other. And you can see it in many, many cases. One of the worst ones was the Ryan Ferguson case, also the Central Park 5.
Yes.
Right? Where they were saying, see the guy next door? He's saying that you did it. So it's either you or him. So it's all this fictitious nonsense. And in the end, everyone says, yeah, I did it. You know, everyone agrees, yeah, I did it. Even though there's no forensic evidence that places that person near the crime scene, the whole idea of the read technique is that it suffocates you, right? But look at the way Stephen Avery handled the read technique, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to talk anymore. Yeah. I don't want to talk anymore. That's it. I've got a headache. That's it. I want to talk to my attorney, and that's it. And that, Paul, was part of the plan by the state to arrest him, right? And put him in prison immediately because they had a plan for him. They had a plan. And it worked like a charm. And I know a lot of people might be upset by what I'm about to say, but in effect, Paul, Stephen was his own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't shut up, right? And so what Ken Kratz divulged in his book, he said, I listened to all the phone calls and I got others to listen to the phone calls, and he was building up a profile, right? And so he actually heard in one of the phone calls was sort of like a joke that Stephen sweated during sex. What does Ken Kratz say 5 times during the press conference? Sweat, sweaty uncle, sweaty this, sweat underneath the hood. He got it. He got it from a telephone call.
Yeah.
Right? And so Fassbender and Wiegert obviously listened to the phone calls. What do? They tried to target Jody. Right? Absolutely. But the first time round, Jody said, bugger off. And if you listen to that interview, Paul, it's disgusting what Wiegert and there was another. I forgot her name. She was in. I forgot her name. She was in there too in the interrogation, and Uyghur was saying, "How would you like your daughter around Stephen Avery?
Yeah.
You know, is he going to murder her too?" I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, the trial hasn't even started yet. And what they're doing is putting pressure on Jodie for a character reference, right? Jodie said, bugger off. Who do they target next?
Brendan.
The nephew, the 16-year-old, the one who's mentally challenged, who's very, very fragile and vulnerable. So they just went down the pecking order until they struck gold.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And I think it was in one of those phone calls where, you've got Stephen talking about the fact, yes, he had the bonfire, and yes, Brendan was with him. And that, again, was, it was only a few days later that they decided to target Brendan because it was away with one of his main alibi witnesses. Yeah.
Correct. And they used the excuse of Kayla,
yeah.
right? So they go, jeepers, we can't give the game away that we heard it on a call. How are we going to target? Kayla said that, she saw blood potentially going down the concrete, and her cousin was crying and he lost all this weight, etc., etc. We'll talk to Brendan again, right? Because they knew he was with his uncle Steve, right? They knew that because in a phone call, Stephen said, he's just come over, he's come to help me clean up, when he was speaking to Jodie, right? So they already knew, right? And who's going to alibi Steve? Brendan. All Brendan has to say, hey, look, I never saw anything.
Yep.
So here's the question, Paul. How does a kid go from saying the truth, hey, I just went and helped my uncle, we cleaned the garage floor, I went home, to rape, murder, mutilation, and cremation?
Yep.
How do you go from I saw nothing, I did nothing, to admitting to these horrific, horrendous crimes?
Well, yeah, I mean, as Jerry pointed out, in America, they are the only English-speaking country in the world where police and investigators are allowed to, as they call it, bluff, which is a sort of a very soft way of saying lie to suspects.
Correct.
And this is why you get so many false confessions, is because people who are being lied to, and that know that isn't the truth, and they realize that the police are quite happy to go with this lie. That's when they begin to realize, I've no chance here. Brendan realized, there was no way he could resist anything that they said to him.
The way they constructed it was very, very clever, right? Yeah. Because the investigators said to Brendan, we know what happened.
Yep.
So Brendan's probably thinking, wait a minute, when I was there, nothing happened, right? So they then pitted him against his uncle, right?
Absolutely.
And they said to him, you better talk, Brendan, because your uncle's saying a lot of things. He's going to blame it all on you.
Yep.
Brendan's going, well, how can that possibly be? So he went along with the charade, right? Yep. Admitting to all these things that forensically were all wrong. Nothing actually fit. Everything contradicted. And then he goes to the investigators. Oh, do you think I'll make my, whatever it was, my 3 or 4 o'clock class because I've got a project to hand up? So even though he admitted to all these projects, do you think I'll get to school on time? He had no idea what he was talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So to me, to quote what Eric Cozy used to say, disingenuous.
Yes.
Right? It was shocking. But let me tell you this. According to the rules and regulations of the Reed technique, Fassbender and Wiegert did no wrong.
Yep.
You couldn't even argue it in court, because when they said to Wiegert, did you lie to him? Yes. Did you fabricate to him? Yes. Did you do A, B, C? Yeah. So to them, they did their job.
Yeah.
They went, what if Fassbender's there? Oh, we're not there to assess his IQ.
Yeah.
Right? So they got the confession, they constructed this confession, and they went with it and they handed it to Ken Kratz. And that's why Ken Kratz said, boys, we better go and do a press conference and bring it out into the wild, which is exactly what they did.
Which was completely opposite to what should have happened with regard to protecting the Holbach family.
Correct. And not only, but Ken Kratz actually did break the ethics codes.
Yeah.
There were several ethic codes that he actually broke by doing that particular press conference, but he wasn't sanctioned.
Yeah.
And what I think it was Strang, he says, how are we going to unring that bell?
Yeah.
Right? Because they polled, I've got it written down here.
Yeah.
I think 130 jurors, potential jurors, 129 said, yeah, we know Stephen Avery did it. He's guilty.
Yeah.
So how the hell are you meant to have an unbiased jury pool, right, when everyone hears what Ken said and laid out the horrible scenario? You've sullied the whole jury pool in the state. So you're not going to get an unbiased jury pool. Although, having said that, 7 of the jurors originally said not guilty. Right? So even with all that, 7 said not guilty, which is pretty remarkable.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. No, we better move on to you. What got one or two things you wanted to discuss about Dean and Jerry?
Yes.
So we better.
Yes. I wrote down a few things because remember we're talking about what did the lawyer should have done in hindsight.
Yes.
But now I have to change my tact a little bit because I now clap my hands because Dean and Jerry, they were carrying a ball and chain when they went into the courtroom. Because I never knew of the Wisconsin laws, but if you read the Michael Cicchini book, you now understand that these guys were in the bear cage. They were doomed. And Kratz, Fallon were rubbing their hands going, boys, this is going to be easy. So in effect, the two boys, Strang and Buting, did a marvelous job to really cause a lot of fright to the state. But there's a couple of things I wrote down which I believe they could have done better. Right? Sure. Not criticizing, but just going with the general theme of our talk, right?
Yeah.
First of all, victimology, right? They should have insisted before any trial started. You needed a victimology done of Teresa Halbach, right? Absolutely. Now, I understand and I respect. No one wants their dirty laundry aired out in an open court. But if your client is going to go to prison for rape, mutilation, and murder, you want to make sure that you're 100% right, correct? There's no doubt. There's no doubt, Paul, there was no victimology or minimal victimology done of Teresa Halbach. Now, I understand it's a very sensitive issue, and no mother or father or siblings want to hear what their daughter or sister got up to, right?
Yes.
But by failing to do a victimology and demanding a victimology, you let a lot of people off the hook who potentially should have been looked at in any other case around the world, in Australia, in the UK, your country, right? The investigators would have started with the closest people and worked out.
Absolutely.
Whereas the state looked at the last person and never looked any further.
Yes.
Right? So therefore, all the close people were totally ignored. Now, you know, and I know, in a cold case, the longer time you wait, the less you're going to pick up, and people can actually hide their involvement, right? So when we get said, yeah, we didn't find any forensic evidence of Teresa Halbach in the bedroom. He goes, Wiki goes, that's because they had 5 days to clean up, right?
Yeah.
And you wanted to get the TV screen and smash it. Because what do you think the state gave people like Blowdawn and Ryan Hilligus? They gave them the same amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So they could clean up their tracks, right?
Yep.
And we know something happened because the voicemails got deleted, right? So some shenanigans were going on in the background, right? And Ryan Hilligus and Mike Halbach, those two, there's something funny going on between those two, right? They look guilty as sin, right? And so victimology is very important, right? Not because you want to be intrusive, but you want to say, well, are there any alternative suspects? And this is where the Wisconsin laws about Denny got the defense gone.
Yeah.
Right? Because the state didn't have to prove a motive for Stephen. But the defense had to prove a motive for a Denny.
Yep.
And the only person that they could point a finger to was Brendan Dassey.
Yes.
Nobody else. And they went berserk. Right? So I wrote down here, victimology should have been done. Paul, do you agree?
Absolutely. I was going to say, in John Farrak's book, that's the Wrecking Crew. That is actually the first chapter of the book, is to look at the circumstances behind Teresa. Not to, as you say, not to try and make her look bad, but just to have a better understanding of her and who were the people closest to her in her life, because we know that it's people close that tend to be. I think it's something like 95 to 99% of the time when it's a huge, a Caucasian murder. Yeah.
Yes, because you need access to that person, right? And all Ryan Hilligus had to do was print out her diary, and he would have known exactly where she went.
Yep.
Right? So all she had to do was listen to the phone calls, and Lord knows how long Ryan Hilligus has been listening in to her phone calls and messages, right? And so I know I'm speculating, but if he was magically able to guess her username and password, and voicemail messages suddenly disappeared, right? You don't know how long. If he's a jealous type of ex, and a controlling type of ex, and even Teresa Halbach had hinted that Ryan was very controlling and abusive towards her, and Tom Pierce said Teresa used to get harassing phone calls.
Yes.
Hello. And Teresa said, oh, don't worry about it. Remember, Tom Pierce said, do you want me to do something about it? He said, no, don't worry about it. Which meant that Teresa knew who it was.
Oh, yes.
And didn't want to cause any trouble. And plus, she even wrote in her diary about Ryan and other people as well, right? So we know what Teresa was also into as well.
Sure.
Now, I'm not going to repeat it, but what I'm saying is, don't you think that's risque behavior for what appears to be a good Catholic girl, right? So those type of behaviors put you in a risk category, right? So, absolutely. And Wisconsin at that time was having all sorts of issues, right? So don't you think you would have closely looked at all these other potential suspects? No. In fact, Ron Hilligus, Blowdawn, a couple of others never even gave an alibi.
No.
Right? So I think victimology was probably top of my list, because it would have given, plus it would have destroyed the bubble that Ken Kratz was trying to present. Remember, all the pictures of Teresa Halbach were all beautiful, lovely, which was good. Good. Yeah. But Stephen Avery looked like a scruff.
Yeah.
He even looked like a killer, if you know what I mean, the way they presented him. They never showed him all clean-cut, shaven, with a suit, talking to the people from, the politics, the high echelon.
Yeah.
No. They used the worst picture you can get, and they stuck them side by side in court to say, here's the beauty, here's the beast.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And Ken, sorry, Paul, if I could just say one more thing.
Yes, sure.
Ken said in his book that he wanted to get up and smack Buting in the face by even suggesting and hinting that her personal lifestyle had something to do with her murder. Yet, every dirty piece of laundry that Stephen did in his past got aired out in open court. Everything in front of his mother, father, relatives, no problems at all. But the opposite could not be done for Teresa, and that was really bad, in my opinion. So victimology, I think I will put on top of my list. If they were going to do it again, they should have demanded a victimology statement. Even if they got a private investigator to do a victimology on Teresa Halbach, because imagine, Paul, if there's a killer out there, is the killer still active? Are other women or men who have disappeared have been murdered by that person? And some guilters might go, come on. That's exactly what happened to him in 85 with Gregory Allen. If they did a proper victimology, they would have thought, mate, the number one suspect, he's got the same MO, is Gregory Allen. What are you doing here, guys?
Yeah.
Right? So again, it is, in my opinion, relevant.
Yeah.
Victimology.
Although going back to the Gregory Allen case, it was, Penny Bernstein herself had grave doubts about Steve's guilt, but who could she turn to? She went to Tom Kasurek, who said, just don't worry about it, we've got the right man.
Yes.
And it's there's not a lot else you can do. And this leads me on to one of my biggest bugbears in all of this is the quality, or should I say the lack of quality reporting by the press.
Correct.
They seem to be as equally complicit in all of this as the bad actors from the state. But
correct,
anyway.
Correct. Yeah, 100% correct. And that's the whole idea. That was the aim. That was the aim of Ken Kratz by doing that press conference, right? Give it to the media. Let the media run with it. And when they interviewed people in the street, random people in the street, what did they say, Paul? I used to think they were innocent, but now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
The damage was done.
Yeah.
Right? Once the media ran for it, that was it. And what did the media representatives say? Murder is hot. Murder is hot. We want more. We want more. So that they were part of the problem. And Ken Kratz was going, boys, we've got all the free publicity we want.
Yep.
This is going to be a cinch when it actually comes to trial. And it was. It was because all the damage had been done for free by the media in their reporting, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So victimology, yes, absolutely. Top of the list.
Yes. And my other one that I've got, because I'm conscious of the time, my other one was, for God's sake, no stipulations.
Oh, yeah.
Don't do it.
Yes.
Right? And I'm sure that Buting and Strang are now probably going, damn, why did we agree with the state? And the number one stipulation that two, the Denny, and also the second one was the pap smear.
Yeah.
Right? They came up with the stipulation that no one's going to ask any questions, right? No one's going to see any documentation. Everyone's going to agree that the pap smear slides are from Teresa Halbach, right? And so I found the document in which there was the slides, the pap smear slides, and there was a report written for all the slides, right? So Fassbender definitely got the reports. All he had to do was table the reports in court to say, this is the chain of evidence, right? Because could you imagine if you're thinking conspiracy, yeah, they gave him Teresa Halbach's pap smears, but imagine if he got another person's DNA, right, that wasn't Teresa Halbach, and it all matched the blood that was in the RAV4, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know that's speculation and a bit mischievous, but if you're the defense, you're going, I want to see the chain of evidence, the chain of command, please, that you went to the hospital, you transported these pap smear slides, you gave them to the crime lab. I want to see the documentation, because let me tell you this is going to shock you. If there was no pap smear, there's no case.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing to compare the blood in the RAV2.
Yes.
They would have said, oh, we have blood and saliva from an unknown female. Oh, we've got item BZ, the muscle that was on the bone.
Yep.
Yeah, everything matches. But by God, we don't have 15 loci here. We can't actually compare it to anybody. So therefore, you got no case.
Yeah.
Right? So by miracle of God, that place keeps the pap smears for 5 years.
Wow.
Right? And that's true. That's a true story. They keep them for 5 years. And I think she went in 2002 to do a pap smear. And the lab, the clinic just happened to keep them. But lo and behold, how can you present a DNA standard of the victim without the proper paperwork?
Yeah.
Right? And Strang and Buting agreed to the stipulation, say, oh, okay. Oh, that's Teresa Halbach? No problems. You need to put some heat on the state.
Yes, I must admit though, it never ceases to amaze me how quick they can, in America, convict people of a murder and find them guilty, even if they haven't found the body.
Correct.
I suspect that if they never found Teresa, they would still have convicted. If there hadn't been bones, they would have still convicted.
I'm sure they would have. I think Travis, the lawyer, gentleman, said something that you don't need a body.
Yes.
You don't need a body. But you see, when Ken Kratz in court said, that's 100% Teresa Halbach.
Yeah. No,
it's not.
Yeah.
You haven't actually proven it.
Yeah.
That yes, there is a 7 out of 15 loci match, but back then you needed 15, and today you need 20. So again, we're talking about statistics, right? So you need to put the heat on the state to say, right, let's see those documents. Let's make sure that what we're dealing with is indeed Teresa Halbach's pap smear, right? And so, you've got this crazy situation whereby you've got her DNA handled by Cherie Cohen, right? So if she's got a pure DNA tube of Teresa Halbach's DNA, you can plant it anywhere you want, right? So that's the power of making sure that who you know or what you've got is correct.
Yes.
Right? Is correct. And so if you go from a planting scenario, right? People are saying, oh, yeah, but why didn't the state put DNA here, DNA there of Teresa Halbach? That's because there was no DNA. There was only cremains. So the planters could only use what they had.
Yeah.
Right? They could only use what they had. Otherwise, you can damn bet you they would have found some of Teresa Halbach's DNA inside of Stephen Avery's trailer, right? But they didn't have any. They had cremains. They had nothing, right? And so the blood that was in the RAV and also the Cherry Pepsi Cola can, they had no idea who it belonged to, right? Yeah. So the planters could only use what they had, right? And it makes perfect sense. So, yes, so victimology and stipulations, very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you, would you say then that the lack of a victimology expert. We've talked obviously about other things like not bringing in the an expert on say burning in a fire pit, a fire expert, various other experts. Is that naivety?
Yes and no. It's also a lack of funds.
Yeah.
It's a lack of money. Yeah. And Michael Cicchini in his book goes, oh, when the state needed an expert witness, they got someone with a PhD and said, all right, you're an expert at this, you're an expert at that. And so the state could call whatever they want, whoever they want. Yeah. And they had many different experts come in. Yeah. The defense team could not do that. They couldn't afford it. Whereas Kathleen Zellner's approach is, I'm going to attack this case. I'm going to attack the forensics. I'm going to get all the best people in the world that have got years and years of experience to ask the question, did Stephen do this? Could he have done it? Or does it point to a third party? And they all came back and said, the state's case is absolute garbage. It could never happen in the way the state presented, right? And when you watch MAM 2, where they go over the forensic evidence, you go, only if Stephen had those experts in his case.
Absolutely.
Right? To assist and to help, right? And the jury wouldn't have known about all those values about DNA, the improbabilities of the burn pit, etc., etc. The jury wouldn't have known. The state presented a case and they built it up. And what happened? Oh, 2 cranial bone fragments. Both have got high velocity beveling. And Lord, oh Lord, we found 2 bullet fragments in Stephen Avery's garage, right? Yeah. And people are thinking, oh my God, what Brendan said actually did happen. Stephen shot her in the head. But then when you look at the forensic evidence, item FL is garbage. It makes no sense. It never hit bone, which means on the outset, it never caused her death, right? And we know that Cherie Cohen contaminated the negative control. So therefore, you can't draw any conclusion to item FL. But now the state is in an embarrassing situation whereby it's got to explain, how does a bullet that's meant to have gone through Teresa Hobart have no blood, no tissue, but wood embedded in it, right? So now they're going, uh-oh, the only way I'm going to get out of this is to say and admit, it was actually due to contamination. So if the state admits it was actually due to contamination, that means you don't have Teresa Hobart in the trailer or the garage. Yeah. The case against Stephen has now collapsed. There's nothing that ties him to Teresa Hobart, and there's nothing that ties Brendan to Teresa Hobart, right? That's why they're hanging on for dear life on item FL, right? Yeah. That's the only thing that puts Teresa Hobart on the Avery salvage yard, right? In terms of her physical DNA. Her DNA is not even on her own key.
Yeah.
What the hell does that tell you, right? It tells you that the key was and they placed Stephen Avery's DNA on it, right? To put an item of Teresa in his trailer, just like Fassbender asked Cohen, tried to put her in the garage or his house. That's exactly what he did.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Couple of things I wanted to just quickly to finish up on. Going back to that incredible statement by Mark Wiegert when asked on the stand about the fact, does any of this stuff show that Teresa Hobart was ever in the house or the garage? And he says, no, they had 5 days to clean up.
Yes.
Is that really the job of the lead investigator, to be offering his opinion on this?
Correct. And
should it not wait a question to be asked of him for then him to give the answer. I find that bizarre.
Oh, it was disgraceful, but he knew that question was coming, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, "How am I gonna end this well, right?"
Yeah.
Because when they were questioning Culhane, beauty, told her real beauty. And I thought, you ripper. He goes, "Well, in your investigations, Miss Culhane, did you happen to ever come across any DNA or any forensic evidence against a gentleman named Brendan Dassey?"
Yeah.
And she goes, "No."
No.
"You had his profile, right?" "Yes." "But you found no forensic evidence against him." And she goes, "I never found his profile anywhere."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They can't admit it.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we get. We get said, "Hey, yeah, you're right. We didn't find any forensic evidence of the victim, Teresa Horber." No. He had to turn it into a positive and say, "Yeah, but they had 5 days to clean up," right?
Yeah.
Like Kucharski says, "You mean an alien put the key down there?" Right?
Yeah.
And it turned into French comedy, a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
Right? That's how ridiculous it became, right? Because everyone's looking at this key going, "Huh? How are we going to explain this?" And so the only way they could explain it was going, yeah, I got the cupboard and I really, really shook it. Right? They were there apparently to get pornographic magazines. So why on earth would Colburn pick up the cabinet and shake it so violently that he broke the back? And no one heard the key drop on the ground. And Lenk came in and said, "Oh, there's a key." And Kucharski goes, "We all looked at the key and we thought, we better not touch this. This looks important." And then I said, "My God, this has got it." It turned into the Three Stooges, right? What Buting should have done, Paul, he should have dropped the key on the ground and go, "Oops." And you watch Ken Kratz, he would have cracked the fruit. He'd go, "Oh, yeah, but Judge, that's not scientific, Hey, Ken Kratz did it.
Yeah.
Buting should have done it. He should have dropped the key. And then everyone would have heard the jangle. And everyone would have gone, "Oh, yeah, that doesn't sound right." And then to make matters worse, what does Colburn do? He writes an email to his boss saying, "Oh, no, the key didn't come out of the back of the cupboard. It was hidden behind the cupboard." So he contradicted his own statement. He couldn't keep a story straight.
No. I mean, I must admit, in the case of the cabinets, I would like to know in which training manual was Andy Colburn instructed to be rough with a potential item of evidence.
Correct.
They're not. They go in there with gloves, and they have to be very careful. Just one final point, and it's a bit like the fact that I think most normal people would see any prosecution of a crime as being on the basis that everybody does their bit of the job. You've got the police that go and the investigators investigate and discover what they discover. The experts, they go and test things so that the both sides, the defense and the prosecution, get the benefit of their testing. There shouldn't really be this need to have experts in the favor of the defense and the prosecution. An expert should be an expert, full stop, and shouldn't be on the side of one or the other. But it brings us back to that Stephen Hayne and Michael West stuff. They used to tout themselves for business around Mississippi area, touting the fact that they were so good at getting convictions. They were the experts to come to. If you want a conviction, come to us. We'll get you a conviction.
Yeah. Apparently they were doing all their bite analysis. It's either in the basement of a shop or a butcher shop or some real weird place. And you think to yourself, jeepers. What they were doing was high flow through, right?
Yeah.
So they can get lots of money, and they had a really good deal going on, right? And you're right. You hit the nail on the head. If you're a scientist, you abide by rules and principles of science.
Yes.
You don't bend them.
No.
Just because you're working in a state laboratory. You treat each piece of evidence impartially.
Yeah.
Right? You don't care what it is.
No.
All your task is, tell me what it is. Right?
Yeah.
Do you find this a particular profile? Yes or no? Right? You don't care. But when Cherie Cohen puts up her hand and says, me, pick me.
Yeah.
I want to be in charge of all the forensics out of the blue. Right?
Yeah.
So she put herself in charge. 2, she went down into the crime lab and did all the swabbing. Right?
Yeah.
So when she's writing down the numbers, swabs 1 to 12 are from the RAV4. Swabs 13 to 18 are from the Toyota, from the Grand Am, right?
Yeah.
Pontiac Grand Am belongs to Stephen Avery, right?
Yeah.
So she knows where the swabs came from, right? Which vehicle they came from, which part of the vehicle they came from, right?
Yeah.
Then she takes them back to the lab and keeps them at her bench, and she processes the information, right? So she already knows what the samples are from where. So if you have got a conflict of interest and you want to manipulate swabs and data, piece of cake, and no one is going to know because she's the head of the DNA section, and whatever she spits out from the computer, she can make any result up. So what you need, Paul, is impartiality.
Absolutely.
You go, someone who's not connected at all goes in and takes 20 swabs and does a code on the swabs, right? And then gives them to the forensic scientist who's going to process them, who, again, is not Cherie Cohen and who's in an impartial lab, and just processes the 20 swabs and goes, I've got no idea what they are. So when you get the results back, you put the 2 together and say, swab 4 came from the RAV4. Swab 5 came from the Grand Am. So in other words, they're all randomized.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
If you know where the swabs came from, you potentially can manipulate the outcome. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct?
Well, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. One of my friends here in Galashiels, his wife works at the hospital as a lab technician, and they, as you say, they people, doctors will send samples for them to test. They will test them. They have no idea who that individual is, because in a community, you don't want, she wouldn't want to know whose, DNA she's testing, who's, whatever it is that she's testing. She doesn't want to know that potentially somebody that she knows out in the community is suffering an illness.
Correct.
And it's the same thing, isn't it? It should be completely new.
Correct.
Obviously, since Making a Murderer came out, Dean and Jerry have launched their Centre for the Integrity of Forensic Science.
That's what they said. They said to Cherie Cohen, we want to come and observe you.
Yeah.
And she said, no. Why not? Because there's a possibility of contamination, right? So what does she do? She was, and I don't believe this is true. She goes, look, I was talking to a couple of trainees, right?
Yeah.
And my DNA accidentally got into the control, but maybe I talked too much and I got too garbage, right? Garbage. She had to use that as an excuse because she's got the highest contamination record in the lab, right? Yeah. And if you're doing PCR on the most important sample of the entire case, i.e. a bullet, right? You don't want to start training trainees then. You want to say, guys, everybody out, this is an important result I've got to do here, right? Yeah. So we can talk about IMFL for hours, but it goes to show the weakness of the state's case.
Absolutely.
It's full of holes, and Zellner's experts have exposed all of them.
Yeah.
From the burn pit right down to IMFL. They've taken it apart. And to me, when it really opened my eyes was when the blood splatter expert looked at the back door of the RAV, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And their expert said they got Teresa Halbach and they flung her into the back of that RAV,
Yeah.
right? And the blood spatter expert said, you got to be joking, right? Because they were smart enough to look at the angle of the droplets of the blood on the back door. They said, no one got flung into the back of this RAV, right? The blood got sprayed on at 90 degrees.
Yes.
And they were able to reproduce it by a blunt instrument hitting and the blood flinging straight back.
Yeah.
It meant that they were able to reproduce the likely scenario.
Yep.
Brendan never said, while Teresa Halbach was on the ground, is this before or after you shot her 10 times, Brendan? We hit her on the head with a hammer.
Yeah.
Because the scenario of what likely happened, Teresa got surprised and got hit from behind, fell to the ground, and someone kept on hitting her. And the blood sprayed back on the back of the door.
Yes.
Right? And that's because those guys have been in the business for 40 years, looked at the back door and said, that's not a person being flung into the back of the RAV. And it completely changed the scenario. Right? Brendan never said, we did this, because he was never there. Right? So this is good forensic science and evidence to suggest Teresa Halbach wasn't flung.
No.
And it wasn't blood from her head that sprayed onto the back door.
No.
She got hit in the back of her head or on the side of her head and then placed in the back of her RAV. She got wrapped up, right? She got wrapped up in something, placed in the back of the RAV, and the top of her head scraped on the plastic panel.
Yes.
Right? Her head was rolling in the... That's what it was, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And if you hear what Brendan said, it makes you laugh because it said, we carried her and we put her in the RAV and we shot her 10 times. And we get in Fassbender and goes, no, you didn't. Oh, that's right. We shot her on the garage floor, but we put her in the RAV and we took her straight out of the RAV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Listen, that's, believe it or not, an hour and a half has just flown past. I can't believe it.
But I got my leave. No, I understand, Paul.
We'll look forward to next week, same time, if that's all right.
Oh, absolutely. Look, if my team can win 4 games, we're going to convert you to St. Paul. If we can win, it'll be awesome. Be absolutely awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, look, thank you very much, Paul.
Pleasure.
I appreciate it very much. And, and also all the people in chat, their enthusiasm and passion. And that's what keeps the case alive and going. Everyone contributing in their own way. And wow, I just can't wait. I can't wait for Kathleen Zellner to tear him a new one. If she can bypass all the archaic Wisconsin laws, because there's some pretty crazy stuff there.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Silkman. There was one question from Hugh Fraser. Could we discuss Luke Berg? At the moment, we're just doing the defense attorneys, but yes, it would be definitely, I think, Dr. Silkman, you'd be up to a little bit more talk about Ken Kratz and the other cronies.
Yeah,
so
Luke was the gentleman for the state. He presented in front of the Seventh Circuit. Yeah. That was just pure garbage.
Yeah.
He didn't care what the judges said to him. He just had a prepared spiel and just spread out the garbage, right? Yeah. But remember, he lost 2-1 the first time round, right? And so the problem was Brad Schimmel was in the background, never going to accept being defeated. So he went to the full circuit panel, and I worked out that there was only like a 0.03% chance of having a 7-member panel look at it again. And they did.
Yes.
They did. It's like being struck by lightning twice.
Yep.
Yes.
Okie dokie. So yes, we've got loads and loads to discuss. The various lawyers and people from both sides, plus also some Aussie rules football and cricket, maybe even a bit of speedway. So thanks very much for joining us.
A pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your evening in.
I will.
In Melbourne, in Adelaide, and I look forward
in Adelaide. Don't say Melbourne.
I look forward to coming and picking up my Crows scarf. Once this lockdown is done and dusted, then Eunice is desperate to get back to Australia. So I've said, well, we really must try and get back across as soon as we can. But anyway, thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch. Thank you everybody that's been in the chat.
Thank you.
Hopefully I've managed to keep up with most of it. And if not, our new mod T1, he will keep you up to date on everything. Okay, it's great having mod T1 as our mod. Thank you very much, T1, and thank you much, Dr. Silkman. Thank you everybody.
Pleasure, Paul. Bye. Thank you everyone.
Bye for now.
Ciao.